Welcome back to another episode of Hidden City Ironworks, where I uncover some seriously bad, wrinkly metal. Let's take a look, shall we? All right, so this is what the state of the car is at the moment. I'm not sure if you can see the dips and stuff, as I pointed out in other... I don't know if you can see that. This is clearly some mud work there, but this is what was lurking underneath the bumper cover, and while it fit, because it doesn't appear to have done any damage in this area, this is what you could see from the inside. That little vent, the hole is just crushed, and it looks like it's pushed in here, and it created a bunch of really gnarly folds and stuff to where that plastic vent was shattered. This side's fine, as you can see, and when I first bought the car, the taillight sat in a way that was hitting the trunk. So I actually came in here and did it before I could see any of this. I sort of flatten this area so that I could get the taillight to sit, and that's me when I first bought it, and must have done some of that paint flaking in the process, but it's clear to me now that this is pushed in here pretty hard. And if you remember, the bumper head, it's a kink right here, and that's the brace underneath that's bent, so I might have to try and figure out if I can get a new one or straighten that out. And these are the braces that hold the bumper cover to the car. I think it's pretty clever, considering I've owned a bunch of Hondas and stuff, and if you've ever seen a Honda bumper through the 80s and early 90s, you know that they almost never stay attached to the car, no matter how hard you try. And Ford seemed to do a pretty clever job of putting these brackets in here. Now it adds weight, but it solves a problem. So I won't knock that at all. But I think what we have to do now is realize that we've got some exposed metal. We've got some hidden filler. I've got in here, I'm pointing to here. You can't see my hand because I'm on the inside. There's a pretty good dent there. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to get my trusty hammer, if I can get in there. No, I can't. I'm going to get a dolly. Sometimes I use a dolly, and I'll show you which ones I use. And let's just take a peek at what we got under there. Yeah. Sometimes you can take, call it a heel dolly, and it's rounded, and you can get it in places and actually use it. Or you can use these. Or you can use a slapper like that one. Or sometimes you just use a pry. I made that out of a hunk of steel, out of a leaf spring. Sometimes you can make your own tools to do the things that you want them to do. So we'll try these two guys right here. See if we can't figure out, make that pop out and watch a chunk of Bondo pop out of there. That'd be kind of fun. Alright, so we're going to get back over here. You can see the cracking. That's not me dimpling it outward, the metal. You'd think it is, but it's not. I'm actually putting the metal back in place. This right here is going like this on the inside. See if you can see that. You can see where I was tapping just now, right here. This is supposed to be, yeah, that's in all the way. And the right way to do it would be to push it out, not pack it full of mud. But it appears that pack it full of mud they did. And if it's a shop, then I say shame on shop. But if it was like a backyard do-it-yourself guy that fixed this, then, you know, this, you know, I mean, we've all got to start somewhere, you know, learn how to do it. But I didn't see that. I didn't see this side until I got home. And I was like, I wanted a straight body to start with that maybe needed some interior work. The engine ran good and something that I could, you know, my wife could enjoy. And when I got home, I realized this car has been loved on in the parking lot a little too much by the locals. Even this is way in. So I got work to do now, and I'm into it. This side here was what I saw in the pictures. So now we have this to contend with, which none of the structure down here appears to be out of place or out of shape. So, and this up here is nice, and the trunk shuts nice and it all aligned. Actually, the trunk aligned on both sides. So that's where I'm at, and where possible, I'll try to bring you guys in to show you the process. It's just tedious, doesn't make for riveting viewing. And I also have the green Mustang out in the back that you've seen in a short. If you haven't seen that, go check it out. We were thinking about calling the car Simple Green, or because it's going to have a truck motor in it, you know, trying to massage it into being a Mustang motor, we might call it Truckstang. Maybe. I don't know. My daughters usually name the cars, so we'll leave it up to them. So this is where we are at the moment. It's just, when you start taking them apart like this, you uncover the true story of the car. Any car. Then when I took the side skirts off too, I was wondering what you thought about. I don't know why, but the car's way up in the air because obviously all the parts are coming off, so the springs are, the suspension is being relieved of its weight. So it looks a little bit like an off-road vehicle. I don't know, I'm kind of digging it without the side skirts. It kind of looks cool. I don't know what it is. I just thought I would give you guys a chance. If you think so too, shoot it down there in the comments if you'd like. Let me know what you think. Again, that door, just all sorts of not even in the opening properly. So I've got to uncover and unearth why that is. And this fender appears to be in the right place, but the other side doesn't. So for now, that's where we're at. Lots more to uncover here as I learn more about this car. It ran and drove, but it was all over the road suspension wise. And it looked like everything is just down. Outside, meh. Interior, disgusting. Engine, filthy. Runs a bit slow. So it needs to be all brought back around. So I'll bring you guys back in on another update once I get some more of this kind of figured out. I have to I feel like I'm getting stuck moving around and not finishing any one thing. Because every time I turn around, it's like, oh, that's damaged. Oh, that's damaged. Oh, that probably needs to be addressed. Well, that doesn't look quite right neither. So I think we're going to focus on this section for now, and the bumper will go on and off 1,000 times just to see if I can't get that straightened back out. Because I really want to just get to hammering on this, but all of this is just a mess. So that's where I'm at. And on this episode, I'll be bringing you in as I make progress here and there, and bring you along for the ride. But for now, that's where that is. Oh yeah, one last thing. This is the trunk lid, and it is off. And as you can see, that's factory primer. That's rust where the seam sealer was, and flaked away and exposed bare metal because they apparently put seam sealer on before they paint the cars. And when it flakes off, you're vulnerable. So you could put a paint job on it and not do any of this and hope for the best, but you'd see something coming through pretty soon because she's getting a little bit bare and worse for weather. So we'll reapply some. And look, this is where the seam sealer was. They stopped here. They're like, you know what, this area here, fine, no worries, don't need to worry about it. But this one, worry. Section, good, I don't know. I'm no automobile manufacturer, but I feel like if you seam seal something, you do the whole seam. Just seems to make sense to me. All right, on that note, I'll bring you guys back in when I make a little more progress. Okay, quick update. I've had one of these. I think I got this at Hobo Freight quite a long time ago, and I've used it with varying degrees of success. So what I've done here is we have welded a series of puller studs into this area because it's crushed in, as opposed to this area where it's flat. No damage, flat, flat, and then this is flat. We have this pushed in, this crumpled in, and this not flat. So this is forced in, and for some reason to get this straight, they just sort of hammered this out and left it all be. And the bumper lined up just fine. However, none of that metal's in the right place, and I could probably cover this up, and I'll do the best I can to get it out. But the bottom line is this is harboring the taillight in spite of itself. It's really, really out of shape. So this is all sort of, I think this is okay here, but this is all pushed in a way that doesn't allow for any of this metal to be in its natural state. So we're going to try and at least pull it out. And if you look in there, there's a bracket in there, and it looks like someone put something in here and pried against this because that, and it didn't work, and they just said, good enough, paint it. And that's where I am. So I'm going to put the slide hammer on those studs, and we're going to work our way around each one of these studs and try to get that metal back out somewhat, because I can't get to it from the other side without cutting some things out, and I'm just not, I just don't want to do that, and neither did the guy who fixed it before. So we're going to do our best here to try and pull that out with these studs, and hopefully we don't just create dimples, because that's always the worst option. So I'm going to give it a try, and that's why I say varying degrees of success that I've had with these things, because they're not always, it's not always a win. Let's just say that. I've got this down while you were away. This was sort of not shaped quite like the other side, and it still has a bit of a weirdness to it, but I think I can, with just a thin application of polyester persuasion, I can get that to look more normal. This, when you see the bumps now, that's the filler cracking. This is all filler cracking, so I'll eventually have all this ground out to figure out what it is that we're doing there. And there's only so much you can do with distorted metal before you actually have to use filler. Filler's not always bad. It's just not always great when it should, when it's too deep, because, you know, if you know anything about physics like I don't, you know that plastics and metals heat up and cool off at different rates, and whether, no matter how good if this is too thick, it's going to cause paint failure in the future. And if you're going to put any money into it at all, you should probably try to get this as best you can, or take it to a professional, which sometimes I have done because it's a little beyond my scope of my abilities. The metal's too warped and I can't get it to work out right, so I've resorted to bringing it to a professional, because I'd like, when it's something I want right and I can't get it, then plan B is take it to someone who can help if you can afford it. And this car, we're hoping, at least I am, to get in there and get all the dents out myself, film it, show you guys how a regular guy in a shop that looks a bit like this, where you got kid stuff, dusty old projects, and piles of parts with no real good way of storing them other than slamming them on the ground. And this is how you do it. So I'm going to continue pulling on these studs, and hopefully I can bring you back for a pretty positive update. Okay, if you remember from the other side, this edge is flat, and as you can see, I'm losing it here, and this has been pushed in. This was pulled out to make the bumper line up, but it didn't do a good job of that, and it's lifted here. So the dance is now is to get this to lay like this without pushing this whole corner in, and I don't have any cool frame tools to keep this from going in, so it's a dance of moving this in, pushing this back out, moving this in. And as you can see, this fold up here is starting to come out. This, I haven't touched this yet, and this was pried way out, and as I've been pulling out here, this is sort of drawing itself back into place a little bit, not much. This side has a unique slight difference as the other. Well, it's not different, it's cracked. The metal's actually cracked. I thought it was a lapped where it was welded, it was folded. This is actually cracked here. So the job, the dance now is I can't get behind this piece of metal, so I'm pulling it out here, hoping and going through each one of these a little bit at a time, hoping that this comes out. So just to recap, this is not in the shape that it used to be, and this is crumpled and folded, and this is torn. And the bump, and this is pushed upward, and that's pushed in. So I'm going to try and apply pressure this way while I tap down on that to get that back into shape. Even though it doesn't affect the bumper, why not? It's rusty. We're going to put a little KBS coat on it to get it to look good, but let's just put that back into place. And for a refresher, you can see how this side goes in. This is nice and flat all the way, and this is nice and vertical. That's what I'm shooting for. And this is perfectly flat. So while the headlight was in there, and I did a little massaging right there, and you can see I used a pick hammer or something really jagged. That's not ideal. Even though that surface is probably okay, this still needs to come out, and this still needs to go that way, because it was really actually the headlight was in there, and it was bound. So we're going to keep pulling on this, and we'll see how we go. But as you can see, I've still got more work to do to get this edge, this point right here where my finger is, inwards, and this part this way and that part that way. So more to come as we get closer, and who knows, it might just never look right and it'll just have to be what it is. But right now I got to make it the college try on it to try and get it in the right spot. Ah, dang it. These are breaking off, but I've been pounding on these for a while. That's normal. It's annoying because then you got to grind them off and do it over again, and it makes the metal weaker in that area. This steel is thicker than up here. This is structural, and it's usually a couple of gauges thicker. And if it's not, it should be. I can tell you it's not on my CRX, that's for sure, because you could just about put a hole through it with your hand. You can see it's really coming out. You can see now how this is ripped. I thought that was a well overlap, but it's not. It's just torn. And even if I didn't fix this, would you have known it was under there? I probably could have gotten it pretty darn straight. But I don't think you can massage this back into shape very well if this wasn't here. This was up. I mean, you can see I still have, this was way in, probably a lot further than that. But let's grind off those stubs and put a couple more in there. We're going to put a couple more in there because I like the spot. I think I want to get one in here. And when you're grinding, you're making your metal thinner, so it's always nice to maybe use a softer a disc. This will take paint off first before metal. And remember, this still has to go in there and this way to get this kink out. So that's what I'm dealing with now. But right now we're going to drop a couple more studs in there. That's a good one. This will probably break off. Oh, that's too bad. That one blew a hole in it. Looks like I'll be welding up a hole and then chasing that around for a half an hour. Nice. And it's stuck in there, and that's beautiful. Sometimes you can see the whole thing move. In certain spots, pull the thing up more completely. It's just crazy how far in that is. That's disappointing. Golly. Back. Crying. Use a palm dolly or a heel dolly or whatever people want to call it. get this fold out because it's not natural. Sometimes a body man's hammer is one of these. Sometimes. It's amazing the tools that you can use to solve a problem. Aren't always the fanciest tools, and one of my favorite guys growing up that built a lot of the models that had his face on the box, who recently passed. He made a lot of his tools. Not because he couldn't afford anything, it's because they worked better for his needs. And I always loved that about Gene Winfield. There's a guy who bent metal and shaped steel on cars for fun instead of to repair it. And I'm sure it was a lot more fun than doing this garbage. He knew a thing or two, I'll say that. And we're not there yet, but we're a lot closer than we were. Now, sometimes you need to tap certain things down, and that's just an old, bolt from Lowe's, or I've run the threads off of it, use it as a punch, hit it on both sides. Sometimes you want to get in here, and you just hit the side, and this is too small, so you use the bigger side. And because you pound on it all the time, it's rounded and it's friendly to your metal. Had this been done right the first time, the amount of filler they put in here would have been half. But you can see this is not glorious. And a shop gets paid by the hour if it was a shop. So you can't always fault them for the kinds of things that they do. It's just a shame that it has to be done that way because of insurance companies when you think about it. Okay, I'm going to call this pretty close to done. There's maybe a little more massaging. Got some welding in here that's cracked. Got a hole here and a couple of the holes where the studs pull the hole out, and that's gonna happen. You're not gonna be 100%, but it's better than drilling holes the old way with the screw and then slide hammer those things out. It's still better than that technique. So we have this edge, this flange out. This is pretty straight. It does get a little wonky here, but the metal's been distorted, and hopefully I can get the vent that goes in there. Hopefully it goes in there and I can seal it okay. The good thing about this is I'm going to set you down and I'm going to test fit the tail light, which is something that didn't go in very smoothly last time. So let's test fit the tail light, shall we? And remember, I had to do some backyard hammering on a Saturday just to get it to fit before, and it didn't go in all that well, and it's still a little, well, maybe it's not. Yeah, there we go. I think that's a win. That gap looks pretty darn good. I'm gonna call that installed. If anything, this one down here could stand to come out. The hole that's right here could stand to come out this way just a touch. It's in too far, which is good because I've got room. So I'll bring that out and I'm going to call that gap factory. Now, as you can see, I started grinding off some of the filler here. Now it's about getting this metal here that's dimpled. It's dimpled this way a little bit. It's dimpled, and you could see it from the back of the car before I started this, that this went in like that and back out to this edge. So there's got to be a ton of filler in here. So we want this all smooth, and once this is smooth, there's a dimple in the door over there, and then I feel like that this rear quarter is in good shape. Then we can move on to the other side. So with that, I'm going to end here. Well, I'm going to call that infinitely better than it was before. And I'm no pro. I'm just a guy in a garage with a bunch of weird tools. And they're weird. I use stuff like this. I don't even remember what it was. But I ground it down and it's got a little point on it and helps me get into little spots. And then I made a tool like this, where you could use this end or that end. And I like to hammer things flush with an old hammer of my grandfather's hammer. And made in USA. So I used stuff like that, and blocks of wood, and chisels. So I guess we'll call this an episode. We'll call this part 1. And with that, I'll say, thanks for watching. I appreciate the advice again from the forums, the SN95 forums. There's the guys out there, you ask them a question and there's so much advice. I know forums seem to be, they're really popular, 15 years ago, but I still love using them. There's a lot of people that you can meet. So on that, I'll say thanks again as always. And if you guys are enjoying this, give me one of those. And I'll see you on the next one.